Now we are moving on to Elon Musk's visit to Netanyahu. First and foremost, I have to ask this question. Why is a billionaire going to Israel to meet with the prime minister of Israel to check out the state of foreign affairs and war in Israel? Elon Musk, I want to remind you of this before we get into the videos. Elon Musk is not a politician. He's not president of the United States. Last time I checked, he's a billionaire. Why is a billionaire going to check out war conflict? I'm going to explain that to you towards the end. But yes, Elon Musk did visit Netanyahu in Israel. And of course, believing and soaking up the propaganda coming from Benjamin Netanyahu. I do not believe that Elon Musk is this dumb. I do not believe he is this dumb. I do not believe he is this foolish. I believe there's more to this that I'm going to get into later. And I'm going to explain to you why he's taking the position that he is taking. So Angelo tweeted, he is crawling. It's quite embarrassing. Where is his dignity? He will regain a bit of respect only if he visits Gaza. So here is Elon Musk and here's Netanyahu, and they're taking him around for a tour.
Last night, some of them returned home. Not home yet, but returned to Israel. And, most of them were kidnapped from the houses over here.
Is when the terrorists infiltrated into the kibbutz itself. This is the house of Bill. On his way back, you notice several terrorists that were right over here. It's a symbol in the kibbutz. You have kids inside, the mothers and the fathers running around with them.
Let's pause here for a second. Let me show you the level of propaganda that's happening in this video. So this is supposed to be a crib, a child's crib, right? So they showed him pictures, they showed him this crib and that there were, I guess, shells or whatever, bullet shells or whatever that were supposed to be in the crib or whatever. Anybody could have put that there. Like I said, again, I do not believe that Elon Musk is this dumb. This is one side of the story. And it was very interesting that he chose to go to Israel and not to visit Gaza. We'll explain this, though.
But it's holding shells, specifically of a Negev, that was used here in order to protect the people. נכנסים לתוך הבית. איפה הולכים? בואו, דו-ספי לבית.
Is that they were murdered, especially
inside them, in order to breach doors or windows. And this is the insignia of the Odessa.
Now, how is this anything compared to the level of impact that Israel has displayed on Gaza? Like, how is this? You can't even compare. You can't compare when you have 12,000 Palestinian people dead. You cannot compare.
there were dozens of
Okay, so that's one of the videos there. So they basically took him on a bit of a tour. Now, I want you to hear what Elon Musk said after he actually had that visit, because this part's very telling. Now, Simon Atiba says that Elon Musk, after visiting Israel, says it was jarring to see the scene of the massacre, or one of the scenes of the massacres, as well as to see the short film afterward that showed more of innocent people getting killed. It was troubling in that movie, especially to see the joy experienced by the people that were killing innocent civilians, including kids and babies and defenseless people, essentially. So here's where I'm gonna call Elon out on this. In talking about people experiencing some type of joy about the killing of the people, notice Elon Musk isn't going to point out the videos that show Israelis celebrating about that joy about killing people, civilians in Gaza. He goes on to say, if it's one thing if civilians die accidentally, but it's another thing to revel in the joy of killing civilians, frankly, that's evil. Now, you're going to hear all of this here during this conversation.
It was jarring to see the scene of the massacre, or one of the scenes of the massacres, as well as to see the short film afterwards that showed more of innocent people getting killed. It was troubling in that movie, especially to see the joy experienced by the people that were killing innocent civilians, including kids and babies and defenseless people, essentially.
Just to remind you, if you wanted to see the videos of what has been happening to the Palestinian people, it's all over X. It's all over his platform. So it's not that he hasn't seen these videos. He has seen these videos. So why else would Elon Musk come out in favor of the state of Israel in reference to this conflict, unless there was some type of threat that has been made? Why else would he do that?
So, it's one thing if civilians die accidentally, but if it's another thing to revel in the joy of killing civilians. That's not, that's frankly, that's evil. I mean, the rebuttal is often made that, but Israel has killed civilians, also in Gaza. But there is an important difference here, which is that Israel tries to avoid killing civilians, doing everything it can to avoid killing civilians.
That is false. So here's Elon Musk, the guy who said he was pro free speech, the guy who brought you the Twitter files, right? Talked about censorship and all that jazz. Here's Elon Musk, and I'm going to tell you what he's about to do. Elon Musk went over there because he got pressure from what I see. We'll show this in a second. He got pressure, I believe, from pro-Israel groups that appear to be advertisers, threatening to pull their money, their support away from X, because X does need ads in order to stay put. So he went over there to let me go over there and see and meet with Netanyahu. And then I can come back and I can explain to people on Twitter why I'm going to start censoring information that I consider to be pro-Hamas. Watch. That's what it is. That's what, plain and simple, that is what it is. This is all about money. This is all about advertisers. The type of threats that he's received recently, considering the videos that we've seen on X, it's come from different people, different groups that have basically told Elon Musk, you better pull this stuff down off your platform. You better take those videos down. We're not going to donate to you anymore. We're not going to advertise on your platform anymore. This is all about money. And we'll talk about his upbringing as well. Listen to the rest.
And, there's not sort of joy expressed. I mean, it was troubling to see massive protests in almost every major city in favor of Hamas.
Listen to what he's saying. Notice he's parroting the same talking points. I told you we're going to talk about this billionaire bro club. He is parroting the same talking points as Bill Ackman, David Sachs, himself, of course, but also RFK Jr. Notice how they're referring to the protests as pro-Hamas. The protests were not pro-Hamas. The protests were pro-Palestinian, calling for an end to the occupation, calling for an end to the oppression of the Palestinian people. But all those people that I just mentioned to you, they all have one thing in common besides money. How many of them are taking money from pro-Israel groups? How many of them? I'm willing to bet all of them. All of them. All of a sudden, the pro free speech billionaire bro club dudes, all of a sudden they're against free speech when it comes to protecting the rights of those who are marginalized. You change the people and you see how they move. Not many criticisms of Black Lives Matter, the corporation, and how they took money and how they made it more of a brand. But Black Lives Matter, the actual grassroots activists, were not doing those things. Notice the rhetoric. Go look at Elon Musk's X page. Notice the rhetoric. Don't talk about diversity. Don't talk about don't talk about identity. And yes, identity politics is a thing, but they don't want you to talk about it at all. Don't talk about these things. But at the same time, I'm pro free speech. We should not have censorship. And what I said back then and what I still say today is that when they were calling out the censorship, they were talking about censorship for people like them. They're still okay with censoring marginalized groups. Don't forget that. You got to remember where Elon Musk came from. We'll get into that as well.
Well, they generally characterize it as sort of a free Palestine movement. And I think, one can generally agree that we want a good future for Palestinians. And we want to, the challenge is really, how do you, get rid of the ones who are hell-bent on murdering Jewish people?
How do you get rid of the Israeli people? Let me phrase this differently. How do you get rid of people like Netanyahu, remove him from office, who are hell-bent on continuing to oppress the Palestinian people? I read you the statement from him recently. He has no plan on implementing a two-state solution. He does not want the Palestinian people to have self-determination. He doesn't want them to have it. And I think Elon Musk understands that. But again, ask yourself, people, why is a billionaire going to meet with the prime minister in a conflict of war? It makes sense for the president to do it. It makes sense for other prime ministers to do it. It does not make sense for someone who is not in a political office, someone who is a freaking billionaire, to go meet with the prime minister during conflict of war unless there's something in it for him. And I said the same thing when Sean Penn went to go meet with Zelensky. There was something in it for him.
Minimizing civilian casualties and then ultimately stopping the sort of propaganda that is convincing people to engage in, murder. So that at the end of the day, that's really essential, is to figure out, okay, how are they being trained to have these, to believe that murdering and having joy at the death of civilians is a good thing?
How is the IDF being trained to believe that murdering Palestinian people and enjoying that is a good thing?
And to stop that training. Yeah, it's important to pair firmness in taking out the terrorists, those who wish or intent on murder, and then at the same time to then help those who remain, which is also what happened in Germany and Japan.
Exactly right.
It's interesting because this is quite a rare thing in history. Usually, the victor pillages the loser, and if you look at it after World War One, the Treaty of Versailles was a big mistake, and it created immense bitterness in Germany, and it's part of what led to World War Two, and then.
Oh, so now Elon Musk is also a historian. So now we're supposed to take historical advice from Elon Musk as well.
World War II, that people realized, listen, we actually need to rebuild the economies and instead of punishing them. And so, you had the rebuilding of Japan, rebuilding of Germany and much of Europe, and then we've had peace and prosperity for a long time. Those who are intent on murder must be neutralized. Then the propaganda must stop. That is training people to be murderers in the future, and then making Gaza prosperous. And
training the IDF is trained to be murderers. No, see, it's okay. See, this is the problem, guys. It's okay for Israel to do it. Now, listen to this statement from Elon Musk as well from this visit. Syrian girl said, wow, did Elon Musk just call for the death of Netanyahu? She's being sarcastic there. He says, on the Gaza situation, there is no choice but to kill those who insist on murdering civilians. Listen to this.
it was certainly been a day, I would say an emotionally difficult day to see the places where people were murdered. I just did a talk with the Prime Minister, and I think obviously there are three things that need to happen in the Gaza situation. I mean, there's no choice but to kill those who insist on murdering civilians. There's no choice.
So to that point, what Syrian girl was trying to bring up, now obviously he's talking about this in reference to Gaza, but what Syrian girl was trying to bring up is that, oh, well, Elon Musk, if you feel that way, then you mean that in reference to Netanyahu too, right? Because he's also murdering civilians and children.
They're not going to change their mind. And then the second thing is to change the education so that a new generation of murderers is not trained to be murderers. And then the third thing, which is also very important, is
you guys hear this, right? And then he goes on to say to build prosperity. Do you guys hear this? Now all of a sudden, Elon Musk, he went there one time. Now all of a sudden, he's an expert. And let me tell you what's happening there. And let me tell you what should happen. Guys, this is propaganda 101. You should never have trusted. You cannot trust this guy. You cannot trust billionaires. You just can't. Now, Fiorella Isabel, she posted Elon Musk and the Israeli Minister of Communications made a preliminary agreement to keep Gaza's broadband internet turned off until Israel gives its approval. So again, who is really in charge? Hint, it's not Elon. If X is your company and you decide, hey, this is my platform, this is what I'm doing. Also, I have this other company and I'm going to give internet access to the people in Gaza, which is something that he said that he would do. Netanyahu comes to you and tells you, no, not until we say so. Is Netanyahu Elon Musk's boss? This is the problem, guys. This is the problem. Fiorella got it. It's not Elon. Who's in charge of this stuff? She goes on to say Netanyahu and Elon Musk met and Bibi labeled Hamas Nazis and a death cult. Listen to this video yourself. Now, as you can see, it says live chat with Elon Musk. There's Benjamin Netanyahu. There's Elon Musk. This was a Twitter space. Why is a billionaire hosting a Twitter space with the prime minister who is currently at war? Where is the federal government? How is this okay? Listen to what they say.
Okay, how are they being trained to have to believe that murdering and having joy at the death of civilians is a good thing? and to stop that training.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, because we have first a mission to destroy Hamas. Nothing's going to stop that, because if you want peace, destroy Hamas. If you want security, destroy Hamas. If you want
peace, if you want security, you stop oppressing the Palestinian people, you stop occupying them, and you stop kicking people out of their homes in the West Bank. This is very simple. There's one person, there's one entity that is in power here. We got to stop letting people like Elon Musk, who everybody cheered on for the longest fucking time, and I continue to say he's a billionaire. We got to stop letting people like him propagandize us. Because the thing is like, you always have to ask yourself, who is in power at this point in time? Who's causing all the division? Who's causing all the conflict? Who's pulling people out of their homes? Who's bombing Lebanon and Syria, by the way, which they don't want to mention that part. It's very simple. So now you got the prime minister of the state of Israel. He is on a freaking Twitter space with the guy who owns the fucking platform. Do people not see a problem with this? If Elon Musk is not going to entertain hosting Palestinians as well in this particular space, in this platform, this is a problem.
better life for the Palestinians in Gaza who've been hijacked by Hamas, destroy Hamas. All of that is a precursor to the question that you asked. You first have to get rid of the poisonous regime, as you did in Germany, as you did in Japan, in World War II. These were two.
There's no choice. There's no choice.
So that's a prerequisite.
Yes.
Some would say that Netanyahu, you're the poisonous regime. Some would say that you're the poison. You got to remember, even some of Netanyahu's own civilians are protesting against him, are protesting against him.
But then look at what happened. I mean, what you had in Germany was denazification, and what you had in Japan under Douglas MacArthur was a cultural reformation. Mm-hmm. And Japan that you visit today is so different from Japan of the 1930s.
Yeah.
Germany that you visit today is so different from Germany of the 1930s. Well, is that possible in the Arab world? And I categorically say, of course it is, because we've seen it already in two places. We've seen it in the Gulf states, and we see that when you visit Dubai or when you visit Abu Dhabi or when you visit Bahrain, you see something entirely different.
Sure.
There was, in fact, a cultural change there. And let me say that that same thing is, in my opinion, happening to a considerable extent in Saudi Arabia. The de-radicalization of these Muslim countries, these Arab countries, some of it already took place, some of it is taking place.
Yeah.
But there's another country with a substantial Arab minority where that is already taken place, and that's called Israel.
Yeah.
20% of our citizens are Arabs, most of them Muslim.
Right.
20%. Wow. He says this as though the Arab population is the majority. And he just told you 20%.
They serve on, in high places in the academy, in the Supreme Court, in the Knesset, and so on. And I'm not saying that there isn't some radicalism there, but mostly there isn't.
Right.
And in fact, they're integrated into the society. So we have to do the same thing. We have to demilitarize Gaza after the destruction of Hamas.
You hear what he's saying, right? So listen to this, guys. He said that they have to demilitarize Gaza. After they root out Hamas, they have to demilitarize them. That's like the police coming to us and saying, give us your guns, and we give them our guns, but the police still got guns. How would you feel? Would you feel safe? Would you feel safe knowing that law enforcement has guns, but the American people aren't allowed to be gun owners anymore? They take your guns, but they keep theirs.
and we have to de-radicalize Gaza, and that will take some time, especially work on the mosques and on the schools. That's where children are, imbibe their values.
Yeah.
And then we have to also rebuild Gaza, and I hope to have our Arab friends help in that context.
Yeah.
So you hear that? He said we have to de-radicalize them. See, they're still trying to control the Palestinian people. This is what I was referring to. But here's the thing. Elon Musk, I'm pretty sure he's seen this stuff. I know he has seen this stuff. I really do think, like I said before, I really do think that Elon Musk, that the bottom line, this comes down to money. I believe that Elon Musk, he talked about this before on Twitter. They were starting to threaten him because he wasn't censoring people to their standards, so to speak. So he's been getting threats that way. He shared that information on Twitter. But I also think that this comes down to advertisers. And I think that X is losing advertisers because of the information that has come across on X. And I think that's why he's saying what he's saying. Now, I want you to hear this video here because I thought this is very interesting. Loki posted this. You've got lawyers around the world wanting to put Israel in the front of Hague for war crimes. A BBC presenter confronts Israeli minister of the economy. Listen to this, because see, at least this particular commentator was willing to push back on it. You see, they're losing the propaganda war. Listen.
14,000 civilians who have been killed.
No,
we completely appreciate many Israelis have lost their lives as well. But thousands of innocent civilians and children are dying in Gaza at the moment.
Lizzie, you have to let me speak on this point, okay? It's not a number game. If they hide behind the civilians and think that we will not get to them, they're wrong. Any civilian in Gaza that gives shelter to Hamas is in danger. We opened a corridor for them to leave the northern part of Gaza so that they don't get hurt. You know what they did? They went into our civilian cities and towns and raped and killed and slaughtered and beheaded people. It's not the same. You cannot compare. It's like the West fighting Nazi Germany. This is the equivalent, moral equivalent. You cannot put the numbers one next to the other. When the US dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, okay, they wanted to end the war. We don't do that.
Okay, Mr. Barker.
We are considerate. We're considerate of the Palestinian people.
There are many people who would disagree with that statement, that you are considerate of Palestinian people. I have to say, I'm sorry, you've got lawyers around the world wanting to put Israel.
If he was considered a Palestinian people, you wouldn't have ripped them from their homes and kicked them off their land. That's not being considerate. You know, they don't like to talk about that, though. This is why they like to stick with October 7th.
In front of the Hague for war crimes that have been committed in Gaza. The UN says it is a graveyard for children in Gaza at the moment. There are many who would dispute the fact that Israel has been considered.
Go to Hamas leadership. Speak to Hamas leadership to put the white flag.
Mr.
These
Barker,
are Nazis.
You see what's happening? So I just want to remind you of a quote that Malcolm X said many years ago. Malcolm X said that if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you siding with the oppressors instead of the oppressed. Still very relevant today. And there's more, because it's not just, these are the things that Elon Musk is not willing to acknowledge. Like I said, they got a hold of Elon Musk. They said some things to him. And I think that's what's happening here. So I want to go to this particular clip here from Case Study QB, where they acknowledge that Israel has killed more UN staffers than Hamas leaders. UN staffers that are not Hamas. Listen to this.
The high-wire negotiations continue in Israel and Gaza, where late today, 11 more hostages were freed. They are now in Israel. Here is edited footage from Al Jazeera showing them being...
We're going to fast forward because I don't want to show them on YouTube, because YouTube, to make sure we get past the hostage part. Here we go.
Here, I want to start with the question of these releases on both sides. It's been 40 some odd days and 14,000 deaths. I've seen some of your interviews in which you've questioned whether this many deaths were needed to get these prisoners out. What do you make of the fact that this pause is happening now, so many deaths later?
Thanks, Joy. I've actually been really clear that I think that Israel has waged, now we're on day 52, campaign that is not a military campaign, but what is very clearly an ethnic cleansing campaign that has not achieved any military advantage. After 52 days and an incredible humanitarian toll of 14,800 deaths, including 6,000 children, 4,000 women, 36,000 injured, 60 journalists, where my colleague Maureen Rabbani points out that Israel has killed more UN staffers than Hamas leaders. They have not achieved anything through that campaign, that onslaught of what legal scholars and genocide scholars has described as genocidal. In fact, the agreement that they had just agreed to in terms of the exchange of hostages for hostages, many of these Palestinians should be understood as hostages, as they're not prisoners. They did not have adequate due process. Many of them, 2,000 of the 8,000 in captivity, are held under administrative detention without charge or trial.
Let's pause there. This is the part that I was trying to tell you about. This is the part that Elon Musk is not going to admit, because Bibi is not going to explain this to him. I really had a problem over the break when I saw headlines where mainstream media network after another was continuing to refer to the Israeli hostages as hostages, but they referred to the Palestinians that were released as prisoners. And you have to remember, again, these people have not been tried in a court of law. They were just arrested and pulled out of their homes. They can arrest you for anything and say you did something that you did not do. There have also been accounts where there have been family members in those homes where the person that they were looking for was not present, so they took one of the family members instead. I was very surprised that I heard this conversation here in particular on MSNBC. And I have no doubt in my mind that had it not been for the multiple protests that happened across the globe repeatedly for the past couple of weeks, that this conversation would have never happened on mainstream media. This is why we say people had to get out in the streets and you had to have large numbers. This is why we push for that. And I remember a couple times last year, people telling me that protests don't do anything. Protests don't work. It's a waste of time. No, they do work if you have the numbers. So the idea is to mobilize the masses, to get people out in the streets, create a global movement, and then you can start to switch the conversation. I don't think this woman would have been allowed on MSNBC to say what she's saying right now had it not been from the pressure that came from people in the streets. The pressure from the streets put the pressure on the politicians. It puts the pressure on mainstream media.
This very same agreement was extended in the first week after October 7th. Israel could have achieved it immediately. It could have achieved it before the ground incursion that began on October 27th. It could have achieved it before the gutting and the incursion of Al-Shifa Hospital, and now 26 out of 35 hospitals. It's precisely why we can see now, if there has been no military advantage, if Israel did not increase its negotiating leverage, but what it did do was mete out this incredible high civilian humanitarian harm, then we are pointing out that the purpose was not, in fact, to release the hostages, which they could have released through this diplomatic exchange, this diplomatic process, a political process, but in fact was a campaign intended to do what many Israeli leaders have told us, which is to turn Gaza into a parking lot, which is to ethnically cleanse the north of Gaza, below the Wadi Gaza line. Now 1.7 million Palestinians, or 70% of the population, has been displaced. And former Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked says that they won't return, but that they should be distributed as refugees across the world. This is why we're saying now it's not enough that we just focus on the refugees, because even those Palestinians that have been returned into the general population can be rearrested under a military occupation where there is no due process or oversight, what is an apartheid regime, and that Israel must be held to account for this amount of destruction that it caused. We cannot turn our eye or attention away from it.
So that piece there is very important, right? they still don't have the right to return. We have to be very aware of that. Now, again, that's something that Elon Musk should have pointed out, correct? No, but he doesn't. How about this? This quick interview here from Chuck Modi with Cynthia Nixon. Now, for those who don't know, Cynthia Nixon, she was played Miranda on Sex and the City. She is actually taking part of a hunger strike right now in DC about this particular issue. Listen to what she said.
We just had a press conference where we explained who we are and why we're here, because we have almost 15,000 civilians killed in just 7 weeks, 70% of whom are children and women. And to put that in some kind of perspective, that's more civilians than were killed in 20 years of war in Afghanistan by the U.S. and U.S. allies.
Did you hear that part there about Afghanistan? This part's important. When you compare the numbers,
that's more civilians than were killed in 20 years of war in Afghanistan by the U.S. and U.S. allies.
More civilians than were killed in Afghanistan by the U.S. and U.S. allies. That's where we're at right now.
That's perspective.
Yeah.
Wow.
The deaths that we have seen are largely due to the bombs, but so many Palestinians now are on the verge of starvation. Only 7% of the nutrition they need is being let in on a daily basis. So we are here hunger striking just to sort of mirror to Biden the kind of deprivation that is happening in Gaza and how he has it within his power to make a ceasefire happen and to allow humanitarian aid in.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
You know, the Palestinian cause has been, I think, one that so many people have looked away from for so long. And what's happening now is horrifying, but at least it is making it impossible for people to look away anymore.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was Cynthia Nixon there. She is participating in a hunger strike that is taking place in DC around this issue with Israel and Gaza. So again, many of you may know her from Sex and the City as Miranda. Don't hear Elon Musk talking about that. Don't hear Elon Musk talking about this article, which is from the New York Times. Even they are admitting Gaza civilians under Israeli barrage are being killed at historic pace. Again, this is coming from the New York Times. Even a conservative assessment of the reported Gaza casualty figures show that the rate of death during Israel's assault has few precedents in this century. It goes on to show you here, look at this graph. You'll see deaths reported in Gaza. Regular reporting on women and children began. Let me move this up. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller just so you can see the dates. Okay, so October 20th, right? And then you'll just see the numbers increase over time. This is just women and children. Over time, the yellow, the orange, over time, up to about 10,000. And then when you look at all people, just above 14,000. So I want to go ahead and fast forward to this piece right here. People are being killed in Gaza more quickly, they say, than in even the deadliest moments of the U.S.-led attacks in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, which were themselves widely criticized by human rights groups. Precise comparisons of war dead are impossible, but conflict casualty experts have been taken aback at just how many people have been reported killed in Gaza, most of them women and children, and how rapidly. It's not just the scale of the strikes. Israel said it had engaged more than 15,000 targets before reaching a brief ceasefire in recent days. It is also the nature of the weaponry itself. Israel's liberal use of very large weapons in dense urban areas, including US-made 2,000-pound bombs that can flatten an apartment tower, is surprising, some experts say. So what I wanted to point out to you is this. Even the New York Times is having to admit that this has exceeded Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria in reference to the civilian casualties. You won't hear Elon Musk mention that. But there's a reason for a lot of this. I want you to remember where Elon Musk comes from. You have to remember that Elon Musk is from apartheid South Africa. Now, some people just don't understand just how bad apartheid was in South Africa. But I want to show you how he was blind about a lot of the issues that were happening to South Africans during that time when he lived there, just as he is either blind or pretending to be blind right now in reference to what is happening to the Palestinian people. Let's go to this piece here where they actually did speak to a friend of Elon Musk. So listen to this about South Africa apartheid. Mr. Musk, best known for owning the companies Tesla and SpaceX, has not talked much in public about a significant swath of his past. How growing up as a white person under the racist apartheid system in South Africa may have shaped him. Remember all this, guys. It's telling. White kids were insulated from the harsh reality of it. This is coming from Terrence Binney, who is white and graduated with Mr. Musk from the Pretoria Boys High School in 1988. Interviews with relatives and former classmates reveal an upbringing in elite, segregated white communities that were littered with anti-Black government propaganda. And here he is, pushing forth this time anti-Palestinian propaganda, falling for it again, and detached from the atrocities that white political leaders inflicted on the Black majority. And he's doing it again. Mr. Musk, 50, grew up in the economic hub of Johannesburg, the executive capital of Pretoria, and the coastal city of Durban. His suburban communities were largely shrouded in misinformation. Newspapers sometimes arrived on doorsteps with whole sections blacked out, and nightly news bulletins ended with the national anthem and an image of the national flag flapping as the names of white young men who were killed fighting for the government scrolled on the screen. We were really clueless as white South African teenagers, really clueless, says Melanie Cheery, who's also a classmate of Mr. Musk during the 2 years he spent at Bryanston High School in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, where Black people were rarely seen other than in service of white families living in palatial homes. Mr. Musk left South Africa shortly after graduation at 17 to go to college in Canada, barely ever looking back. He did not respond to emails requesting comment about his childhood. So I'm pointing this out to you because of this. Once again, Elon Musk is doing the same thing. He is promoting the propaganda of the racist apartheid government and administration under Netanyahu and ignoring the plight, the oppression, and the suffering of the marginalized group, which in this situation is the Palestinian people. Sometimes you don't have to look too far to see why people have the views that they have and why they have the actions that they have. So there's two things happening here. Number one, growing up in apartheid, like Elon Musk did, not being willing to hear the side of the oppressed. And two, I firmly believe that advertisers have pulled out of X, just as donors have pulled their donations from universities that have had these protests. And Elon Musk is seeing money go out the window. And if you grew up in apartheid and you didn't get to see how the other side lived and you didn't get to hear the other perspective, you're not going to be as willing to do so now unless you've had a complete transformation, which I don't believe he's had. So think about it. All these people, Elon Musk, David Sachs, Bill Ackman, RFK Jr., all these people are in the same damn club. They're pro-free speech for what benefits them and their agenda and their cause. They're against speech that does not. So at the end of the day, Elon Musk is looking at his bottom line. I got to tell you guys, I told you, do not trust billionaires. You can't trust them. You can be nice and be a billionaire, but never forget they got there by exploiting people. Tesla employees have complained about the way that they've been treated at the company. Elon Musk won't even let them unionize at Tesla. This is not a great person. Let's go to some of the comments here. Fuck the billionaires. I'm telling you, fuck them. You cannot trust these people. Mad Crab says there's tapes on him. Could be. Tia says, okay, so go and visit Gaza now, Musk. Get both sides of the story. Thank you, baby Ethernet. Elon, why are you there? Narcissist MSM shill. Mr. Positivity, Sabby, I shared the list you gave us the other night. 4 million to Biden alone from Israel. Yeah, the open secrets. Yep. Where he says Bibi's popularity is really, really low right now. Thank you. Sparky says, hey, Sabby. Hello, Sparky. Spark Joy says, Brother Malcolm was always pro-Palestinian. That's right. And thank you for the super chat, Sparky, as well. Israel's best bet is to blame it all on Bibi and, if possible, convict him of crimes against humanity, then learn to get along with others. We need to think about this for a second. If Russia was doing what the state of Israel is doing to the Palestinian people, the U.S. government would have highly condemned it from day one.